Hello everyone and welcome back to another patch rundown. My name is Blaster Boy and I'm joined once again by the AMO. This is patch 6.18. This is the Worlds patch, the final set of changes before we go into the World Championship, guys, before we see the world stage. Keep in mind, Yorick is in this patch. He will be disabled. However, but nonetheless, we can just kick off with Yorick, I suppose. He has a full-fledged relaunch here. He is effectively a completely new champion, more or less. Do you know very much about this Yorick rework, Amo?
I have not seen him play in the current live version, but I have watched a little bit of the beta, and his skill set has changed slightly. So if you've played with or against the old Yorick, it was never, what's the saying? You're not playing League of Legends today, right? Yeah, that's basically what it was like going up against Yorick in top lane most of the time, right? Well, now it seems that's true. He still has some of that same power, but not as much. But now it's shifted to the fact that he has his maiden, which is going to be extremely optimal for split pushing. Think of it as a roaming ZZ Rot portal.
Yeah.
I guess is the best way to look at it. It just will push and push and push, and by pushing it kills minions, which then gives the maiden then gets to spawn more ghouls, max up to 4, and they just keep pushing. So I can see Yorick being a terror until you reach that point in the game where teams are smart enough and coordinated enough to more easily stop split pushing.
Yeah, so you think his split pushing will be a major point of contention with him then. That seems to be something that's very much upfront with his design. I definitely do agree with that. I'll be interested to see if we do see him in pro play at all. Once again, he will be disabled for the duration of Worlds, but he'll be shown at All-Stars. He'll be available for the IEM events coming up in November and December, and then also, of course, for LCS next season. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for Yorick, an entire season in the upcoming year, for him to get to stretch his legs a little bit. He's been on the sidelines for a while, so it'll be nice to see him come back, if that is the case. But with all that said, we can move on to Ashe. So Ashe has a very small change here. It's just a cooldown increase on the volley. It's definitely not a game-breaking thing for her. It's not going to push her entirely out of the meta.
No, it's entirely going to be focused on lane dominance and lane control. Ashe can be, even though she's an immobile AD carry, so you tend to want to gank her more often. And with her higher cooldown on volley, she has to possibly consider the threat of a gank versus, just spamming it into the wave to get a CS control.
Yeah, it's definitely used as a pushing tool by her quite a bit in lane.
Yeah, and I think this isn't going to hurt her to the point where she falls out. We'll still see some Ashe at Worlds.
Yeah, so she'll still be picked for her unique, the unique space that she fills as an ADC, as an initiator, with quite a lot of peel as well. We'll have to see if this combined with the other nerfs knocks her out. I don't think that it will. It just makes her a little bit less safe at the moment. In passing here, Aurelion Sol has a little bit of a bug fix where you no longer see his stars in places where he is not. If you watch the TSM versus CLG series, or at least attempted to watch a game 1 of that series, then you would have seen that bug in action in pro game. It got him disabled, but he'll be back for Worlds, so Huhi will finally have his champion pool back. And there are some more changes for Aurelion Sol on PBE, but none of those will really matter. Moving on, Echo is the next one up. 4 AD, Amo. 4 AD, completely gone from Echo's base AD. Do you think this will take him anywhere very quickly?
Yeah, no. Yes and no. So what the 4 AD, they're taking off the base attack damage to start. That's going to affect his Trinity Force, his Sheen procs. It's going to not allow him to easily, auto CS with auto attacks, trying to save up his mana. Not that he had
Hmm.
particularly mana issues. Um, it means 4 AD based on when then you're getting Sheen procs on towers and uh, that type of thing is out of the top lane. It's gonna dink it a little, but it's not gonna actually like take him out of top lane. Now in
Hmm.
solo queue, where people aren't as proficient at CSing, uh, this may hurt people a little bit more. But I think really it's just saying them. It's just another attempt at Riot being like, Echo's supposed to be played as a mid lane skirmisher,
Yeah.
assassin type champion, and the further we can bring Echo away from the top lane and put him back into the mid lane, the better. This also hurts jungle Echo
Yeah.
because you're doing a lot of auto attacking in the jungle too. So
Yeah. Particularly his initial clearing will be quite a bit slower now, losing about 4 damage per auto.
yeah,
Moving forward, though, we do have Gnar next up. Now, Gnar has been dominant for a few patches now, particularly with the Frozen Mallet into Black Cleaver into full tank build. And Frozen Mallet was also changed in this patch, by the way, but right now, Gnar changes straight up. Hyper's damage was nerfed. I believe it was just increased a few patches ago. Just to see that go back down so quickly can kind of show you where Riot is seeing a lot of the power come from. And they also increased the cooldown quite significantly on his hop in the early game. So he's been extremely lane dominant. Impact has been solo killing people left, right, and center with him from all levels of LCS play. Do you think this will knock Gnar completely out of the meta? He is like he's top end of tier 1 right now, so he has a long way to go.
he's not going to fall out of the meta. Just like the last two patches we talked about hitting the jungler slightly, touching on those AD carries. This patch, as we get in later on, well, it seems, and especially when we talk about Echo, it seems to be touching on the top like 4 or 5 top laners, right? Your Gnar, your
Mhm.
Gangplank, your Echo. Even though Gangplank's not touched in this one, just
Finally.
yeah, I think they've tried to take enough Nerf bat wax at him, and they'll see where he stands. He'll still be played at Worlds, by the way. Gnar, with the hyper damage, they're just reverting it back to, I believe, what it was before. Sort of, they made that switch to wanting the standard lanes, and Gnar is really good in the standard lanes. But they made the addition to his the hyper damage before they switched to standard lanes like requirement, and now that that's switched back, he doesn't need that extra damage on hyper because he's already kind of a lane bully if you play him that way. The key is
Yeah.
though, as you're playing him a lane bully, you used to only put 1 point in his E, which is his hop, which was increased by now 4 seconds. That's 4 seconds is a pretty good cooldown
Yeah.
considering it's your 1 point wonder on Gnar. You put 1 point in it at level 3, possibly 4 or 5, depending on your matchup, and you leave it there until the end of the game, right? So in those early team fights, he's teleporting into that first or second dragon. He's still going to be at 22 seconds. He's only going to be able to either engage once and not be able to hop out, or hop away once for a gank, and then if you repeat gank, if his flash is down, you're going to be able to get him. So little less safety in the top lane, slightly less engaged in the mid game, but he's still going to see a lot of play.
All right. Well, moving on to Lee Sin, another very small change. Now, these patches, again, just to reiterate, there were 3 patches completely focused on world balance. This is the last of these. This is, again, the on-stage patch. There's just a lot of little fine-tuning, bringing the maybe 5 through 8th champions up a little bit and bringing all the ones above them down a little bit to try to mix it up in the middle. Lifesteal and Spellvamp was increased for Lee Sin by 5% per rank from his Iron Will, his second cast of W. Do you think this will significantly increase the amount of Lee Sins that we see in jungle?
It possibly can. The additional lifesteal, I know at one time the max W was one of the ways to play Lee Sin, because of the lifesteal and the spell vamp,
Yeah.
you could get so much sustain from the jungle that it wasn't necessary to like get pots and then because you're getting wards anyway, or a sight stone to like help jump around and with vision, that an extra sustain could help Lee Sin, especially going from like his level 2 ganks or his level 3 ganks into a lane. I don't think it's going to be enough to see him at the professional level at Worlds, though. I think there are too many junglers like in his way at the moment that provide a little bit more either utility or CC or damage, depending on how the team wants to play it. But I think higher ups, I mean, it's going to make Lee Sin, playing Lee Sin a little slightly easier.
Mm-hmm.
Don't play him in bronze.
Yeah, that's just good advice for a lot of champions with skill shots, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So, moving on, Lissandra, just a very small change here. Her health growth, so the amount of max health that her pool is the amount of health that her max health is increased by per level was reduced down to 75 from 84. So she's losing 9 health per level from what she was gaining before. I don't think this will make a huge difference for her. She still does a ton of damage, but it just means that she has to build a little bit tankier, maybe, and favor that Roa build a little bit more.
I think that's kind of what they kind of want from her. I know she has that passive where like every 11 seconds or so she gets basically mana. Is it mana back or
it's a free spell?
Free spell, basically Nunu.
Yep.
So, but it's kind of how Lissandra. I mean, you want to either be spamming your abilities or like not doing anything with your abilities and trying to, just auto and manipulate the wave.
Yeah.
So I think the health. I think the key here is like right before she hits 11 and gets 2 points in her ult. That 6 to 11 range, that self ult is not going to allow for as much healing, and especially like later in the game, because that 90 at 100 extra health that she had is that she's now losing at like level 10. So she may want to be a self ulter instead of a ulting an enemy opponent. But that's going to show the difference between bad and good Lissandra players, right?
Yeah.
If you're really good at Lissandra, you know your levels of when to ult the enemy carry or the enemy diver, when to ult yourself when you're diving or when you're peeling for your AD carry, that type of stuff. And I think that just is going to show that skill level difference slightly more.
All right. Next up, Lulu. She exists in this list. However, it is only a bug fix, so I don't think we're really going to comment on that. This just means that she's working as intended. Glitterlance was not slowing for as long as they intended it to. Next up is Lux, though, with an actual change. Now, her E, when you walk in it before it's detonated, it is a slow field. The slow is now higher by 5 to 9% from where it was before, depending on the level. Lux has been on the edge of the meta for a while, and was even shown from Froggen in the summer split on Echo Fox. Do you think that Lux will be a potentially contested pick now that her CC exists a little bit more? It's a bit of a weird change.
No, the CC is going to help. I think with at the lower levels more than it's going to help at the higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
The higher levels, there's so much intricacies between landing her Q, her E, and her R in certain orders to deal either max damage or to land the max CC combined in with your W. They're not increasing the damage, so it doesn't help with wave clear. It slightly helps with CC, and it's very slightly. We're still in a world where some champions are straight up running Boots of Swiftness still. A lot of champions the Taker ones are still running Merc Treads. It's, a lot of pro plays and a lot of teams, every team should have an Aegis on them, which helps with the magic damage, but not necessarily the slow. But once again, the slow's only in a small area. And it's only a little percentage. I know she's maxing the skill first. I just don't see it as enough to bring her up into that echelon, especially because the mid lane is the most full lane of viable champions, or
Yeah.
champions that can be most picked from. They have the largest champion pool to see at Worlds right now.
Yeah, so I think it'll be used. This will allow it to be used more as a zoning ability to cut off a choke or something like that, deny an engage, enable an engage from your own team potentially. It's not a large enough percentage increase, I think, to make a huge difference and make some of those cases, except for a few really fringe cases, possible. However, that could be a potential use for it. I don't think that we'll see her very much at Worlds. She's just unfavored with her lack of mobility and kind of difficult to land burst. Nonetheless, Miss Fortune is the next one up. This is a fairly large change in my opinion. Love Tap, her passive, now applies full damage to turrets instead of half damage. So I think this is a pretty big buff for Miss Fortune, and I played against one earlier. Our tower got melted very quickly, so I can see that the buff is already working.
Yeah, the buff is now put Miss Fortune at this point where she's not like Tristana Jinx level of taking towers, but she moved ahead of some other champions.
Yeah.
In this tower taking, and when they're so important with this first brick gold going to that first tower going down, if team wants to run a quick push, hit our comp, Miss Fortune's probably one of your better AD carries for that.
Yeah, definitely agree.
I mean, or Jinx, but once again, it kind of depends on who you're playing, what you're playing with. But
yeah, I mean that kind of disparity between those two champions though is kind of the goal with all of the little reworks and class reworks that Riot's done.
Yep.
So that's a good situation to be in, I would say, where you just can take the benefit of a big team fighter that takes turrets very quickly, or take advantage of a bigger team fighter if you have CC to follow it up that takes towers pretty effectively as well.
Yeah.
Moving on, though, Nocturne is next up. It's been a while since he's been in any patch notes with any buffs. His Terrify duration from his E was increased quite significantly, I would say. Well, it's actually no. It's just a quarter of a second per rank now. I think it was a half initially. Nonetheless, what's going to live? Quarter of a second increase on Terrify. Do you think that we'll see the return of Nocturne? Bloodraiser seems pretty strong overall. I could see him coming into the pool potentially, especially with the next champion in Rek'Sai being changed as well.
I see Nocturne being a really niche pick for very certain circumstances with teams that want to run a more carry style jungle. Nocturne can be a dive person, but Nocturne's not like a Vi who dives, who builds like one damage item or like, your jungle item, damage item, tank. Nocturne kind of has to get in a couple of things. The 0.25 seconds allows addition. Terrify allows what, 1 to max 2 more auto attacks?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that can't be the difference, because it definitely can be. I'm just saying that I'm not quite sure if it's just going to be enough to put him into that pool for Worlds. It's going to make his clear slightly better if you're using your E. You're using his E on the big creeps in the jungle or the big monsters. But once again, I'm not sure it's going to outweigh the cost of spending all the mana and cooldowns on it.
Mm-hmm. All right, fair enough. I did hint at Rek'Sai getting some changes next up, and that is the case. For the record, just to clear something up, Rek'Sai has received repeated nerfs over the last few patches, but up until, I think it was just before the last patch where she got even more nerfs. For one thing, she was still considered tier 0, which for junglers, a lot of people still considered her way above everyone else, even after all of her nerfs. This is now her 8th consecutive nerf in a row with no buff since her release. So, man, Rek'Sai's had a really rough time. Riot has said that they're going to change the direction with Rek'Sai in the future, so this is just something to kind of hold her over for now and kind of take her out of the pool a little bit. Armor is reduced. Her base armor is dropped by 4.3, for base, and then her growth was also hit as well. So overall, quite a lot less armor for Rek'Sai. Make sure that you double down on those seals now,
Yeah.
in order to make sure that
Seals.
you can survive the jungle.
Seals, you can go HP Quints, scaling HP Quints, or I mean, it depends on your rune set you have. But as you want to play Rek'Sai, you want to look at either increasing your HP Quints or your HP Seals, or your Armor Quints or Armor Seals, depending on how you're running them to counteract this change. This is something that they did to Jarvan, not as drastically as what they did to Jarvan, but when Riot was just sick of Jarvan being in the jungle after like 2 straight seasons of him being in the top 3 the entire time, they just took armor away from him, and it made his clear so much less healthy that it wasn't necessarily safe to like jungle him properly, because you had to like tinker with him. Now this is not as much as they took from Jarvan, so Rek'Sai will still be seen at Worlds. Rek'Sai will still be a top 3 to 5 jungler, because the vision and communication that Rek'Sai can provide in a team setting, in a organized setting, in that strong, high communication, pinpoint, you need to know who's going where, what, when, where, why, how. Rek'Sai brings too much information with her tunnels and her passive and her, sonar type stuff. You're not. I don't know if you're going to be able to see that Tiamat build, though. You may be still able to, but I think Rek'Sai will have to go more straight tank for her team coming up.
Yeah, that does seem to be more or less the goal right now. I'll be interested to see how Riot does change her. They said they want to change her role from a tank more to a fighter. They want her to be more damage focused rather than tanking focused and utility focused. So there will be adjustments there in the future, but that will not be seen at World. Likely not until after the World Championship is over even, but we shall see. Next up, Ryze. Again, just another bug fix. Similarly to Lulu, Realm Warp's tooltip and range indicator were incorrect. The cast range on his ultimate was actually 1750 instead of 1500 at level 1. It's still short. It's not as short as it used to be, but that was also changed a patch ago, and I haven't seen a significant influx of Ryze. So we shall move on to Shen. Now this is where the balance changes start getting kind of crazy. There are multiple balance changes for the next few champions. Shen is the first one to kick it off. His base shield from his passive was reduced. The damage from his Q-empowered autos were decreased, and the enhanced damage from passing that Twilight Blade through an opponent and then auto-attacking them was also decreased. So Shen has been a big lane bully pretty much ever since his rework. He finally came into pro play pretty recently, and he's seeing a ton of play from it. Do you think that this will be enough to completely knock him out of the meta, or do you think he'll still be there?
Shen will still be in the meta. He just is going to have to play differently, and teams are going to have punishing his weakness. Now, while he can be a lane bully, one of the reasons why he's picked is because he can play into a Gnar and not get dumpstered. He can play into Gangplank. He can play into the Yasuo. He can he was safe, right? He was your safe top laner, and when you forced the meta, when the meta was forced and changed to make sure that it was a 2 top, 2 mid, 2 jungle, and 4 people in bot lane, what's one of the things that always happens? Pile in the bot lane.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
That's what happens.
Unfortunately. I know it all too well from an ADC main.
Yeah. There's a reason why 2 Shens is a meme. It's because, Shen can pile on the bot lane twice.
Yep.
So his power and his split push, his damage, all of his autos, his enhanced damage, that's getting dealt pretty harsh. And if it goes to a more, carry top laner, Shen can play into some of the carry top laners. Like, Shen can play into Fiora. I mean, have you ever watched a Fiora ult Shen and then Shen just hits W and like Fiora can't like proc her stuff? Like
Yeah, no.
that's kind of a bummer. Shen will. I mean,
Indeed.
but then Shen won't, because it won't have the damage, won't have the split push potential that currently has. I think it is a dent to him. This definitely hurts his solo queue. But for the pros, I think they'll still be able to play around it because of the importance of his ult and his teleport.
All right, fair enough. Next up is Taliyah. Again, kind of a heavier nerf here. So Threaded Volley, they added 50% bonus damage to minions a few patches ago when she was having issues. They've now removed that, and they also reduced the damage from each of the mines from the damage overall, rather, from her Unraveled Earth, her E. So her minefield does less damage. She doesn't clear minions nearly as well with purely her Q. Taliyah delivers in other areas, though. Do you think that this will be a big enough hit to push her out of viability? She can't just auto-clear the lane and then just take off and roam somewhere now.
I think they want to try and put her at the position where Twisted Fate is. Twisted Fate can work and is capable in certain comps. He has some bad matchups, but if he's not picked into one of those matchups, he can do fairly well. Her ult is I need to get somewhere. I'm going to, instead of showing up with a gold card, she shows up with a wall that they can't, unless they have flash or dash, they can't get over.
Yeah.
And a slight, little knockup. So she's not bringing technically any hard CC other than that knockup. Instead of Twisted Fate, who shows up with a gold card, hits you, gets his procs off, Thunderlords, the whole shebang. Now that being said, they work differently in the late game. That's so they separate in the late game, and I think that's what makes each character specifically unique and how you want to play with Twisted Fate. All backdooring, split pushing, that type of stuff. Where Taliyah is more of team control of objectives using her ult, whereas Twisted Fate's ult is used for individual taking of objectives or isolating for kills. I think this does hurt her, but I think this puts her in the place where Twisted Fate is. Still healthy, still will be seen at Worlds, but not just something you can pick into any mid laner.
All right, sounds like a plan. Speaking of being able to pick into any mid laner, Vladimir is the next one to see some changes. His base health was dropped. The healing from his Crimson Rush, which is his empowered Q that he gets after 2 Q uses, and then the healing was reduced on that. The health cost for his E was changed. The health cost was reduced, actually, but the cooldown was increased. So and that's only an early increase on the cooldown. So they're trying to make it seems like so that Vladimir is healing for a bit less, and he's less tanky and impossible to kill, but his damage seems to be there a little bit more with this reduction to his E.
So his damage isn't necessarily more. What they're reducing is the max health based on the duration. The max health that costs Vladimir to spend it is going from 10% down to 8%.
Right.
Which 2%. But they're countering that with a much larger cooldown at rank 1 is 13 seconds compared to 9. He's not going to be able to get off 3 or 4 of these in a mid-game team fight. He's not going to be able to spam this to just push in a wave as soon as he hits 9 type of deal because of the increased cooldown. Now, Vladimir already builds extra health, which his bonus health, because he's going off his base health, it still hurts him because he's lower health. He doesn't get as much healing. It's going to cost him longer to clear waves, so it's slightly harder for him to get maybe CS possibly in the early game.
Mm-hmm.
I think he was in a position where I think some teams had figured him out how to play against him. Some teams like CLG obviously haven't figured out how to play against him. So it just kind of depends on where the team was sitting. For solo queue, once again, a good Vladimir player who's played a lot of this new Vladimir or has adapted well to it compared to the old one. I still think we'll see similar results, maybe a drop in a percentage or two if they play enough games. But I think this is definitely a pro scene nerf.
Yeah, definitely seems like it. Speaking of, well, this is not necessarily a pro scene nerf. This is an all-around nerf.
Yeah.
And this is on Yasuo. So his base attack speed was actually increased, but his attack speed growth, the amount of attack speed that he gains per level, of course, was reduced quite significantly at that. And on the more technical side, this isn't actually in the patch notes here, but the delay between his autos was also increased a bit. So the animation is a little bit different and maybe a little bit longer than you might be used to. So just keep an eye out for that. The next change is his ultimate. The bonus armor penetration from his ultimate cast now only applies to critical strikes instead of all of his autos. They are forcing him firmly into that crit building position as if he wasn't already there in a lot of instances. This is mostly hitting that the Frozen Mallet Phantom Dancer build, I feel. Do you think this will kill that build and bring his win rate down significantly?
I'm not. Well, I think when we touch on Frozen Mallet, I think that's going to hurt him just as much. So, the tank Yasuo build is being diminished enough that once again they've taken someone who they want in the assassin role. Now they don't mind him being in top lane, like Echo, where they don't want Echo in top lane at all. But they want him dashing, weaving, getting those crits off. They want him building the Phantom Dancer. They want him building the Static Shiv. They want him building the IE first. They want to say, this is what you need to do to maximize Yasuo's potential. Now, where you go from there, I think, is less critical to what they want out of this champion. And this is what it's all going to. I'm just hoping that they get those. And it looks like they got more bug fixes on his ult as well that didn't allow him those extra auto attacks that crit in his ultimate that he had. Glad they fixed that as well. So I don't think he'll be seen specifically at Worlds because of this. Unless, once again, you never know when a Korean team wants to, have some fun with, international competition. So
yeah, I think there are a few teams that legitimately have pulled it out. Impact did play Yasuo top in the playoffs, I believe, or in the gauntlet. And I did not see the game personally, unfortunately, but he apparently dominated on it. I know, I'm pretty sure it was, what was it, Kikis pulled it out on Fnatic as well. So he could be seen. He is somebody that has played, but not nearly as much as in solo queue. I think that's where the main focus with this is. So
yeah,
wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't pop up, but I don't know if it would just be because of these nerfs. Next up, we have actual item changes this time. Frozen Mallet has a build change here, so it now builds out of Jarm's Fist and Giant's Belt and 900 gold rather than Jarm's Fist, Pickaxe, and Ruby Crystal and 625 gold. The total cost is completely the same. It loses 10 attack damage but gains 50 health. Do you think that this will hurt Gnar's lane dominance? We just touched on Yasuo a bit with the Frozen Mallet build. It's really weird. Those changes will probably be enough to steer him clear of it. But Gnar is one of the main offenders of Frozen Mallet at the moment, I feel. One of the most dominant across the board. Now he's just going to be tankier rather than actually dealing as much damage. Will that be enough to make this build less frequent? Do you think it'll be enough to change the build and force him to go Black Cleaver, or just shut Gnar down a little bit more?
Well, Gnar was going Frozen Mallet first, then Black Cleaver. Yeah. I can see him now going Black Cleaver into Frozen Mallet because with Black Cleaver you're getting the cooldown reduction, which then helps negate some of that 1-point wonder on his E, which is his escape, right? So I just see them flip-flopping, honestly, in Gnar's build. Other than Gnar and the tank Yasuo, I don't think I've seen anyone other than like Teemo build Frozen Mallet in months. Yeah, so
regularly,
maybe a Quinn, Like, it was something really weird and vague, right? It's
Mhm.
it's a very specific niche item where you want someone who needs to be able to either kite or stick to someone who needs to be tanky at the same time, but only doing like single, like they're not doing like a ton of like area effect spells and stuff, because it's more effective obviously if you're doing it on auto attacks. Now that doesn't that describes a very small percentage of the league population. So I don't know. I mean, it wasn't ever overpowered. I just think it is more niched the niche item.
Right. Yeah, it ended up just being kind of oppressive with how common it's become on certain champions. Gnar, in particular, being able to repeatedly solo kill people with what's supposed to be a more tank-focused item just off of the base damage from his abilities, as well as the bit of AD that he got from an item like Frozen Mallet.
Well, I think it's more of the slow. As soon as he got onto
the
you,
slow definitely did help.
because
that was a major contributor.
the hyper proc damage we're talking about, that's being nerfed. The damage on this is being nerfed. But instead of him chasing you between your outer tower to your second tier tower, he's not going to just be able to chase you through your second tier tower, because it's going to take him longer to kill you. By then, he's gone the Mega Gnar form, and he's throwing you into the wall anyway. So
yeah, it's just dragging out that play pattern. It'll still exist, though, you think?
Yeah, it will still exist. Especially when you have extended lanes, and you have someone who wants to be in the extended lane and just, use full advantage of it. And like I said, he just needs attack damage and he needs health.
Yeah.
It works for him.
Yeah. All right. Well, the last change of this patch is Relic Shield, 5 health, Amo. Take it off of the Spoils of War healing.
Oh, jeez.
I don't think this is going to really matter. It's only 20. It was only 20 in total. Now it's only 15. 5 is a pretty large chunk of that, but I don't think it's going to reduce the number of supports that we see using this item.
Now, it was nice when your melee support had the Relic Shield and you were using it to, get the health back. But I don't know if pro teams were taking this into consideration. I don't think any solo queue member is going to be like, hey, wait a second here, my level 2 health, it didn't go up as much as it was supposed to. Notice this is only on tier 1. This is only on the very starter. This isn't on any of the iterations afterwards.
Yeah, so it means that missing 5 health is still there on the others. It's not missing. It still exists. So
this doesn't affect like Taric or Alistar, who have heals on them anyway. This is targeted, I guess, at Braum and Trundle, Nautilus,
maybe Thresh.
Yona?
Thresh can buy it too. Yeah,
Thresh can buy it too. It depends on how you want to play Thresh. I've seen a lot of Threshes go the Talisman.
Yeah. Well, so you don't think this will make any significant changes? I don't think that it will. Really?
No, I don't. No. To be honest with you, I don't even know why they did it.
Yeah,
I've never been like I know I'm not a bot lane player. So you played a carry. Have you ever been like, oh, I can't believe that Taric was able to Relic Shield him for 20 health and keep him alive?
No, never. No, not once.
Never. You're like, well, he's dead.
Yeah. So 5 HP, it can be the difference maker. Again, in some fringe cases, similarly to a change that we mentioned before, in just some fringe cases, it can make a difference. However, this is not one of those. In the majority of the time, it won't be one of those. Yeah, it'll be very, very rare.
We're talking 5 health a minion.
Yeah.
And how many times do you, let's say you're perfect on your timing on your Relic Shield, you're getting every single time it pops up.
Just in lane alone, like before you upgrade and this change is not even relevant anymore, you might get 10 or 15. Maybe.
So you're looking at 50 to, 150 health?
Something like that, yeah.
Somewhere in that range?
Not much.
That's not enough, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, with all of that said, that is going to be it for this episode of the Patch Rundown. I hope you all did enjoy. We went through quite a lot of changes here. Again, this is the World Patch. Keep all this stuff in mind. So, quite a lot of this stuff will have an effect on pro play. That was the goal for the last 3 patches even. So go study up on those before the world stage kicks off at the end of September. Once again, I am Blaster Boy, joined by the Amo. Thank you for joining me once again. This has been Patch Rundown for 6/18. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.
See you next time.